It was like, I mentioned last night to a meeting like this up in Delta Township. Back when I was in the legislature, I was asked to vote on a number of tax increases, including cigarette tax increases. And I never voted for cigarette tax. People said, Tim, you were a minister for 10 years before you went to the dark side of politics. But you were still a minister. I mean, you're not a cigarette smoker. You don't like that. No, I know. Well, why not vote for it? I said, well, Article 1, Section 1 of the state constitution says all political powers inherit to the people. Government is instituted for their equal benefit, security, and protection. So if I could legislate a tax on a small, dirty group of smokers, that's how they're treated, then what happens when they come and say, now we want to tax that group of blonde, blue-eyed, conservative, right-wing, of Swedish descent legislators? I mean, that's absurd. But I think you get what I'm saying. If we have equal protection under the Constitution, we have security. Doesn't mean it's always nice, it smells nice and lacks smoke or whatever else, but we're treated equally under the law and under the Constitution. And that's what our framers had in mind. And then they expected people to behave, to rule and govern themselves, not to have the evil arm, as it were, the hard arm and the hammer of the law on every part of their life. So I think in answer to your question, that's about the best I can get. And then my wife will keep track of me. Here.
Tim, I've been a lifelong Republican, but I can tell you I am so mad and so disgusted at the National Republican Committee. And for what's going on in Washington, D.C., I just don't know who I could possibly vote for today. One of the concerns I have, and there's a lot of people...
I'll give you one choice.
Serious concerns about the credibility of our nation today, which and the credibility of Congress that you just talked about, that this gentleman just talked about. My question to you is, specifically, we talk about deficit spending and the tremendous debt load that our country is faced with today. My question to you is, what can you do in Congress, and what would your plan be to get us out of this mess? What can you do to cut deficit spending and to get us on an equal income and expense basis in Washington, D.C.? That is a question that deserves an answer, and the Republican National Committee and many of my Republican friends that I voted for don't seem to have answers.
Well, the simple answer is to cut spending. Cut spending and cut taxes.
And how are we going to do it? Where? You can say that, we can cut spending and
I can tell you easy answer to that. In fact, legislation and amendments I supported, and the majority of my Republican colleagues in the U.S. House did last time around. You go and you say, at the very least, department heads, we expect you to reduce your budget, overall budget, by 2%, by 3%, by 5%, by 1%, whatever. And we offered all of those amendments at those levels, including a 0.25% that was turned down by the Democrats. You go to your budget. You find a way to cut your budget overall by 3%, real cuts, and we'll applaud you for doing it. That can be done. We've seen governors do that in states other than Michigan. We've seen department heads do that here in Michigan. Terry Lynn Land, the Secretary of State, did it in her department. Mike Cox did it in his department. But they were the two Republican heads there doing that. It could be done all across the governmental system. So I co-sponsored amendment legislation to budget bills. Each of my opportunities in the 2 years in Congress that said we will cut the overall budget by 3%, 2%, 1%, 0.5%, 0.25%, and the Democrats shut those down. If we're given a majority, I can commit to you that if someone else doesn't offer that amendment, or more importantly, a bill that says overall cut for all departments of state except in defense, And we'll look at that carefully too. But overall, a reduction, not just a freeze, but a reduction, because that's what all of us have done out in the hinterlands. We've reduced our spending. We've drawn in our budget, our purse strings and our belts.